Mike, I'm showing attendees still on hold.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to RISMedia's webinar series, How Million-Dollar Producers Run Their Business, and not just from a sales perspective, but from profitability and culture. Today is going to be an amazing webinar. This is Verl Workman with Workman Success Systems, and we're happy to have you here on the webinar today. We have a great sponsor and partner in these webinar series with Homes.com, and I'm going to introduce Tim in just a moment. As we get going, before we get too settled, designer, inventor, futurist. Infusionsoft, an Arizona-based provider of customer relationship management
Hang on one second.
secured $54 million in growth capital from Goldman Sachs in 2000. There we go. As we get going on this webinar today, let's make sure the host doesn't have any technical difficulties. If you have questions during the webinar, and I hope you do, I'd like you to pay attention, close attention to the toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen. And there's a little downward arrow that says questions. If you just want to say hi in that questions box, I'll know that you know how to get in and get a question. If you have questions for Tim at Homes.com, for Cleve Gaddis, or for Paul Wheeler or myself, just type in your questions right there. That way we know you have the ability to get in and ask questions. There will be times during the call where I'll pause for questions and I'll ask questions, and I encourage you to do the same. We have amazing producers that are true givers that are willing to really share with you on how to build that seven-figure business. If you have any technical difficulties, I would encourage you also to go in and use the questions area to chat your question and type it in there, and somebody from our technical team will reach out to you and do their best to answer your questions and help you with any of those technical difficulties. The last thing that I'll tell you from a housekeeping perspective is just to stay on till the very end. We have a great list of giveaways. Both of our presenters today are Workman Success coaches, and they just have an amazing amount of content that they want to share. And there's some tools and some systems that they use to help their business to succeed that they want to be able to give with you. So at the very end, we'll give you a download link where you'll be able to download those free giveaways. And so thank you once again for being here, and let's get this underway. So first, I'd like to introduce Tim Rabara with Homes.com. Tim is a international speaker, trainer, and coach with Homes.com. He's based out of Boca Raton, Florida. He annually coaches tens of thousands of brokers and agents nationwide, empowering them to take their businesses to the next level. Tim has a unique style and an advanced level of real estate marketing knowledge that empowers real estate professionals to exceed their online marketing goals. With all of the changes and things that you see happening with the internet and what the things that Zillow's doing, Homes.com continues to stay ahead of the curve from a technology perspective and provide an unfair competitive advantage for the agents, brokers, and team leaders who utilize their services. Tim and his wife Jennifer live in San Diego. They like to play sports, they love golf, and they love the great outdoors. They're active in their community and their church, and he's been a youth minister for more than 10 years. Tim, thank you so much for being our partner on this webinar today. And welcome. Tim, are you able to hear me? So Cleve and
I'm here, Verl.
You can hear me okay?
I'm here, Verl.
I wonder if we.
Yes.
All right. I wonder if we lost Tim for a minute.
Okay.
Tim, is that you coming back?
I'm here. Are you guys on?
We are on. Yep.
Yes.
And you should be.
Can you
do
guys
you see
hear
my
me now?
screen? Yep, we can see you. We hear you great.
Okay. So you. Yes. All right. Perfect. I guess I was muted there for a few minutes, but hey, Verl, thank you for the great introduction, and thanks for this great webinar series hosted by yourself and also RISMedia. So we're excited to talk a little bit about what's going to be happening today, and just real quick from Homes.com, what we're all about, one click away from Google. I think Verl, when it comes to online marketing, I think a lot of agents and brokers with their online strategies could use a lead source like Homes.com. I know yourself, you're pretty heavy in digital marketing, right?
Very much so.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, I guess there's a little bit of a delay here, but just want to thank everybody for tuning in this afternoon. And just with Homes.com, we're definitely a partner in the industry. For anybody that's listening in today, I mean, basically what we can do is we can set someone up when it comes to online marketing and digital marketing. We provide buyer seller leads in in particular markets. I'm excited for today's webinar, and I think at the end of it all, if anybody has any questions about Homes.com and how we could be a partner in your business, definitely reach out to me, and let's talk a little bit more throughout this webinar today. So I'm looking forward to it, and we're just excited to be here, Burl, and I'm going to turn it over back to you.
Tim, I appreciate that. Before I jump in and introduce our two presenters, I just want to ask you really quick about the city sponsorship program and what that looks like. I think our delay with Tim is probably
the broker and the agents and team and high-powered teams.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry about that. It sounds like the delay that we have with Tim, it makes it hard for us to communicate. So we'll invite him to come back a little bit later, ask questions. And if you want to learn more about Homes.com, I will tell you this. My experience with Homes.com over the years has been not just average, but exceptional. And when you think about where people go to look for houses online, Homes.com, I believe, is the best URL in the business. I wish I owned it, because that's where people go. They look for homes online, and when you search for homes, Homes.com comes up. So if you're not capitalizing on the brand equity of Homes.com and the resources and the systems that they have for lead generation for buyers and sellers, it's something you got to take a look at. Many of our top agents and brokers use Homes.com and have great success with it. And so we're grateful to have them as a partner as we get into these programs. So I want to first introduce my first guest is Paul Wheeler. Paul Wheeler is a broker owner with Accent Realtors in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Well, Paul, welcome to the call, and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Vero. Glad to be here.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to give you a little bit of background on Paul. Paul is a Workman Success Systems coach and does a great job of helping clients take their business to the next level. He started at Accent Realtors in 1992, and he leads the team with an incredible amount of energy and experience and vision for the future. Paul is a true leader. I've had the opportunity to work with Paul as a coach and coaching him and developing. And one of the things I've noticed about the way he interacts with his team is his team members love him. The culture that he builds and the relationships he has with his clients is what he projects onto them. So they project that onto the consumer, and it makes for a great business. He's a consistent national top producer. He sells over 40 times the average realtor nationally. He's ranked in the top 0.1% in realtors nationwide. We talked about him being a certified coach. His philosophy is to serve clients at the highest level through education and communication with a focus on doing what's best for them. One of the things I love about Paul is because he's had success in his business and his life, he's been his own best client as an investor in real estate. He's at a point in his life where he gets to choose to do what he loves. And that's part of why, what makes him such a great leader is that he's doing what he really, really loves. And he inspires me every time I talk to him. He spends a lot of his time on doing the dollar productive activities, and the reason he works is so that he can maximize the positive impact that he has with his family first, and then his clients and his team and his community. So Paul, thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to have you share what it looks like to run a seven-figure team.
Thanks, Vero.
And then I'm going to come back and introduce Cleve. Let's go ahead and jump in, Paul, and let's talk about your roadmap to success.
All right, fantastic. So again, pleasure to be here. When you asked me what it was like running a seven-figure team, I sat down and I think my first choice for the highest priority action I think you would take in starting from where you're at to get to a seven-figure team is a long-term vision. I always say we need a roadmap or a strategic plan if we want to get anywhere. And that's something the Workman system does really, really well. So we have our business plan, and then we have a strategic plan, and it's 5 years out. I'm a little, sometimes I'm an overachiever, a little excessive and over the top. So 25 years ago, I was lucky enough to sit down and spend some time and create a 20-year vision. So I knew it had to be detailed. Someone had told me, or I'd read it somewhere, and I started writing out exactly what I wanted my life to look like. And so there's a key there, or a pearl there, and it wasn't what I wanted my business to look like. It was what I wanted my life to look like. So everything about it, my relationships, my finances, my health, my business, and I wrote it out in the smallest detail you could ever imagine. I say I knew what it felt like and smelled like and tasted like. I knew what I'd do on a daily basis and what I'd drive and the house I lived in and the world travels I would do. And the most amazing thing happened. 20 years later, I looked up, and granted, I paid attention in the previous 20 years, but I was living that exact vision. I mean, right down to the smallest detail. And I still pinch myself and go, oh my gosh. So you need that plan, you need that long-term vision, but I learned a couple of lessons in that process. So the first one was when I looked up, and I was 50, I'm 55 now. I looked up and I couldn't believe I was living the life that I had envisioned so long ago. My first thought was, well, shoot, I should have set bigger goals. So if you're going to create a vision, eliminate your limiting beliefs, because I accomplished everything. You can bet now for the next 50 years, I'm going to live to be 100. I multiplied my goals and my vision by 10 times and even more. So eliminate your limiting beliefs when you're creating that vision, but write it out. And the second best thing I learned was a process that you guys actually use, the Workman system does very, very well, is if you have a goal that you're trying to get to in the future, I don't care if it's the end of the day, next week, next year, whatever, you have to back into it and look at what your action has to be now. So I was lucky enough to say, okay, this is where I want to be in 20 years. And I wrote all this out. What do I need to accomplish in 10 years to reach that 20-year goal? And then what do I need to accomplish in 5 years to reach that 10-year goal? And then 1 year and 6 months and 1 month and 1 week. And today, what do I need to do today to get me to that 20-year goal? And what I realized very quickly is that a great life is made up of great days. So a great day or several great days makes up a great week, and then great months and years, and it just all builds on itself. And Workman has, great systems for getting us there. But two of my favorite tools that I use that really, really helped me in that area were a daily planning in solitude, and I can offer a copy of that if you'd like at the end. But my daily planning in solitude helps me step back, and I do it every morning at the home gym when I'm working out, and I ask some questions. And so one of the questions I ask, and I'm reading my daily planning in solitude right now, is how did I fill up my cup yesterday and wow our clients? Or right now I feel and why? Where was I uncomfortable or unclear and why? What's the one thing I want to do today, or what's my intention? What could I do to change the course of my business today? So those questions where you're always looking at where you're at and your priorities, and it gives you clarity, which is so, so important. The other tool that I like, or the other process, is a daily huddle. And that's where our teams come together, or our team comes together every morning, and we connect. And it's kind of funny. It's like I'm a dad, so meals or mealtime is sacred, is what I tell my family. And we all come together and we connect. Even in the summer, I rouse my kids out of bed, and we connect over breakfast. And when we're there together for lunch, we do lunch and dinner. And those special moments of connecting and communicating and talking about successes or stressors or finding solutions is just powerful, and we have amazing kids because of that. Well, if you bring that to the office, you still need to connect, and you still need to communicate, and you need to celebrate the previous day's wins and look at your intention for today. And those daily huddles of 10 to 15 minutes are really amazing. It's one thing I would never, ever, ever give up in my business, and Workman has the process for that too. So, okay. So and I think we have to go backwards on slides, Virl, just a little bit. My next thought is if you're going to hit seven-figure or grow a seven-figure business is you want to become a leader, and you have to go from agent or transactional to becoming a CEO. Your job changes from all the production to supporting your team now. And Burl, you say it really, really well. Your whole job now is people development and business development. So I couldn't put words to it before I met you, but that's a perfect way to describe it. So we need to learn to delegate, but be team focused. Burl mentioned it. Our team loves me. I love my team. They're amazing people, but it's because I'm focused on them. You want them to succeed. It's not about just you anymore. And one of the best things I've learned is you can't motivate people on your goals, but you can teach them the correct daily activities to help them achieve their goals and give them security and stability, which is what most people want. You said it recently too, and this stuck with me, Burl. You said people quit leaders, not companies. So that ability to lead a talented, amazing group of people comes down to you, and it's your responsibility to grow as a leader. There's so much information out there to learn to be a better leader. Just find it and do it. All right. So this
I hope I didn't say that right after somebody left.
You probably did. You are my coach. So. That's all right. All right, back up to the next one, if you will. So next one, there you go. Okay. So and you had mentioned this earlier. So besides growing as a leader, your responsibility as a leader is culture. And as leaders, we have to lay that groundwork by our actions and our communication. We have to be so constant and consistent. And it's interesting, every group of people will have a culture. Your family has a culture. Any volunteer organization has a culture. Your team will have a culture. And you have to decide if you're going to create it or it's just going to develop on its own. And my recommendation is you create it. So you be in control of it. So one of the things about culture is you want a culture of clarity. And it's interesting. Cleve, I actually heard you, I think it was you that said this recently. And it said most of the challenges we have in our businesses come back to our inability to communicate effectively. And that is so true. We cause most of our challenges. And as entrepreneurs, we generally are our own worst enemies. And our favorite ways to lead or create a culture is just do it like I do, which is a really bad plan. So we need to have a really, really clear mission and vision and core values and extreme systems and processes. And all of those take time, but they have to be developed if you're going to have clarity in where you're going and what you're doing and how you're serving your clients. Everything needs to be written out. We need to have checklists for everything. And one last thing on that clarity, our voice as a leader has to be the GPS of the team. One of my favorite tools for this process is what I call my daily broadcast voicemail. So what I do is I live a mile from the office, and as soon as I get in my car to go to the office, I pick up the phone and I broadcast a voicemail to every team member. And it's going to be about, how we serve the client and better ways to communicate, more effective ways to be productive and systems. So I'm always casting that vision. Again, I always talk about kids, just like we do in our families. It's amazing. I have a 16-year-old now, and from, when he was 2 years old, we taught him to be kind and respectful, and we want to raise happy, healthy, productive adults. But you just don't tell them that once. You tell them over and over and over. Now I have a 16-year-old that says please and thank you all the time without being asked. So it's just a process of communicating consistently. Okay?
I'm thinking that there might be hope for my 14-year-old now, so thank you for that.
There is. Yeah, if he's anything like the rest of your kids, he'll be amazing. So then with culture, too, you want a culture of productivity. And, Burl, you taught me this, and it's where people choose to excel. Cleve, you're going to talk about setting personal and team goals and tracking those. And so I'll leave that to you. But one of the things I've learned that everyone isn't the same. We have to help them reach their goals and really tap into their why. What gets out of that? What gets them out of bed every day, and why are they passionate about coming to work? They're not going to be just like you or me. We need as leaders to help them be the best version of themselves they can possibly be. Another part of culture is accountability, and it's inspect what you expect. If we're going to help our clients, or our team members succeed, accountability is something we do for them, not to them. Just like I tell my kids daily, I swear, remember, I'm on your side. My intent is to help you. And so we need to inspect everything we do, lead follow-up systems, and every system we use for that matter, lead conversion, presentations, everything has to be consistent and used. If we do not inspect, everybody will veer off of the system, and when systems aren't used, chaos ensues. So we as leaders need to know how to help them using all the wonderful data that we get from the Workman system too. With all the tracking that we have, we can have our weekly one-on-ones and use the data that we have in there and help guide them and say, you know, this is where you're struggling. What can I do to help you get past this? So that's a culture of accountability. And the last thing on culture is culture of profitability. You need to know your numbers. It's kind of funny. It reminds me of my first year in the business 27 years ago. And I got a call from my accountant at the end of the year because I didn't know a thing about my financials until that point. And he said, do you want the good news or the bad news? I said, well, what's the good news? And he said, well, you made $32,000. And I said, well, what's the bad news? He said, you spent $32,000. So I became a proponent of knowing your numbers and profitability from that point forward. And you need to know your lead costs and your transaction costs, and you need to know what chart of accounts you're using, and you need to look at it multiple times a week. So you don't wait until the end of the year. And I have 7 different corporations, and I look at the financials 3 times a week at least, and rarely miss any length of time in looking at stuff. A few of my favorite tools for my financials I'll share with you, and I call them my daily critical numbers. There's a thing called leading indicators versus lagging indicators. Your P&L is a lagging indicator. So at the end of the year, or the end of the month, or whatever, most people look at the end of the year, you get that result. Well, that's too late to make any changes. So on my daily critical numbers, we have it right in the bullpen and in the huddle area. So everybody looks at it. We actually report on it. We turn around, we say, okay, our total pending contracts, so number of contracts pending is this. So we have a minimum of 20 that we always want to be above. So if it's 30 or 40 or 50 pending contracts, great, we're doing well. If it's getting close to 20 or even below for some reason, we know we have our work cut out for us. And then the second daily critical number I love is daily income month to date. So the way that works is, let's say it's the first of the month, and I make a sale, or my team member makes a sale, and we have a $10,000 commission. So the daily income for that day is $10,000. So our daily income is $10,000. Now, if we go to the 10th of the month and we do not make another sale, our daily income is now $1,000 a day. And on a side note, if you're wanting to a 7-figure team or bigger, and lots of money, above $1 million, just add $1 million, you'll want about a $3,000 average daily income to produce about $1 million for the year. So that's a great tool. And then the last one is total pending dollars. I look at that constantly. So our rule is we want to always keep it above $100,000 in total pending commissions heading towards closing. When we're at 150 or 200,000, that's wonderful. Again, if it gets close to that 100,000 in total commissions or below, we know we've got our work cut out for us. And then I have one other thought on profitability, because I get this question a lot. They say, what money should we take home? So what should be our net profit? And generally, there are 2 numbers I look at. I think we should have about a 40 or shoot for about a 40% profit on adjusted gross margin, or 25% of total gross commission income. And I'll explain the adjusted gross margin because that's jargon. So if I have a $1.5 million GCI year and I give $500,000 to the sales team for producing that business, I have $1 million in adjusted gross margin. So it's the GCI minus the cost of sale. And so for that $1 million, I should have a $400,000 profit, or be striving for that at all times. So that's a good number to use. All right, so that's culture profitability. And then the next is operational excellence. So if you want to slide that slide.
So Paul, I'll slide up, but I love this slide because, you know, in Tulsa, the market shifted in a lot faster than it has around the rest of the country. And this is your lead tracker, and it was really interesting to watch how you looked at the data from the lead sources that you were utilizing to generate leads and what you turned off as you started to see a shift in the market. Do you mind sharing a little bit of your thought process with the group?
No, I'd love to. So yeah, we shifted, and all of a sudden, our listings came down, and we had a number of things that happened, but the business that we were used to doing slowed down or dropped considerably recently. And so we had the data with the Workman systems to adapt and adjust very, very quickly. So we had to be careful with what we spent our money on. And what we found, and I got to study not only my numbers, but teams from all over the country, which was wonderful. You just have a great resource of data. And what we found was that most of our business comes from past clients and referrals and center of influence. And so we upped our game with them, and we're right back to where we need to be as far as production. And we quit spending some of the money on marketing that was marginal and giving us a low return on our investment, or took a lot of time and didn't give us a return on time. And so knowing where to focus our energy and money was really, really important. And this resource, this is a Workman slide here, platform is great.
So I love that. But what I love most about it, Paul, is that you actually took the data and then you took action. A lot of people, they get data, but they don't do anything with the data. It's not actionable. How much would you say that you cut in your monthly overhead by looking at what the market was doing, looking at your lead sources that were converting, looking at your 6 to 8x ROI? How much monthly overhead did you cut? And what's interesting is you're now back to where you were producing before, but you've cut how much in overhead?
Yeah, great question. So you bring up a good point, though, because as you get to be a big team, sometimes you don't look at your expenses as tightly or as regularly as you would when money is tight. So we were able to cut, it was close to $20,000 off of our monthly expenses. And that to me is shocking, because I like to think I watch the finances very, very well and stay on top of them, but we were able to cut that and become profitable really quickly when the market shifts. So you just have to keep an eye on that stuff. And I give you credit for that, because you were my coach. So.
No, I you know what, I give you credit for being willing to do hard things, because it's hard when you're on TV and you're a big shot in your town, and everybody knows who you are, and you're running ads and realizing that you're not getting the ROI. There's a lot of ego involved in the way we do marketing, but I think it's even more powerful that you have increased your sales while you've decreased your overhead by 20 grand a month. So your sales, your trajectory has gone significantly higher because you're focused on the things that give you the highest return. And that just says a lot about the way you're running your business and your team. So congratulations for that. And I think there's a lot of people listening that think they have to spend a lot of money to make a lot of money, and that's not always the case.
There you go. And so you make a really good point. It's interesting to watch some of the other top producers in town, and they're not operating off of clear data. They're just watching us because we're a heavy hitter in our market. So when the market shifted, some of the people that were, about half the volume I was, but they're moving a lot of homes, they went, ooh, Paul's still successful, or he's always been successful. He's been bigger than us. We're going to do billboards and TV at a massive level. And I'm going, oh my gosh, those aren't working right now. And they're dumping all this money into that. And I'm pulling way, way, way back because that's not what's driving the business right now. And I'm thinking to myself, they are hemorrhaging cash because they think it works, but they don't have the data to really, really know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So give me a little bit about team structure, if you will.
All right. So team structure, I thought I'd just spend a couple of seconds on that. And Cleve needs his time, and he's a lot smarter and better looking than I am, so we don't want to cut it short. So steps to growing a team. I think back 26, 27 years ago when I got into the business, within a couple of months, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I need an assistant. And that was before teams were ever thought of, an assistant was ever thought of. When I hired an assistant, fellow realtors went, what are you doing? But I knew that it was a face-to-face business. And when I brought in an assistant, they just did everything to keep me in the field face-to-face. So that's important. We've got some background noise. Can you hear that?
Yeah, I'm trying to cut it. There you go.
Okay. And then some other basics or fundamentals. When you hit approximately 25 transactions per year, I say hire a buyer specialist and focus only on listings. And Burl, you're an expert at this, so if you want to add 2 cents, don't hesitate to. Each listing that we get as a listing specialist should produce about 6 to 8 buyer leads per month, and we should have 1 buyer specialist for every 25 buyer leads that we produce, and then hire more as needed. I'm in the process of hiring more. And then every buyer specialist should be able to produce 20 to 50 sides, depending on, level of experience and skill sets and systems that are in place. Once you hit 100 transactions, and I even say and beyond, 1,000, 2,000, I don't care, we start building an org chart, and we have a business. Voila, we have a business. We separate marketing and closing departments. We hire listing partners. And more buyer specialists. Listing partners should be able to do 30, depending on their level of experience in the business, up to 100 sides a year. And so you just grow your business, hiring great partners, and build that organization and with systems and processes. And all of a sudden, 20 years later, you're living the dream.
I love that. There's so many things and insights that you have on running a successful business. And I want you to, if you don't mind, Paul, stay on with us and let's see if we have questions. If you have questions for Paul Wheeler, use the questions bar. I'm monitoring that and ask those questions, and I'll do my best to tie them back in. On your chart, what does TC and VA mean? You want to describe what those two things mean?
Good question. That's the slide that Chet made. So we'll have to ask him. VA is
transaction coordinator.
There you go.
Transaction coordinator. Yeah.
So I call it client care coordinator, and our marketing team or contracts closer. So every market is different. So funny. Thanks for calling me out on that, though.
No, somebody asked the question, so I was just passing it on. You nailed it. You nailed it. Great, Paul. Thank you for sharing. And without any further ado, I want to introduce the amazing Cleve Gaddis. Cleve has been a host on many of these RISMedia webinars. He's a team leader of Gaddis Partners at RE/MAX Center in Atlanta, Georgia. And you'll hear his southern accent as he starts talking. He's also a master coach with Workman Success Systems. He runs a phenomenal team. He learned the sales the hard way. I remember the first time I met Cleve, and we started talking about how we cut our teeth in sales, and he told me I'm a door-to-door vacuum sales guy. And more than a door-to-door vacuum sales guy, he was a regional vice president for Electrolux and built out a huge sales team, teaching people how to do direct sales. And he brought those skills and those thoughts and those experiences from the direct sales world into real estate. He loves systems. He loves strategies. He's a brilliant thinker. He makes me think differently about the way I run my business, and is constantly questioning and making me question what I do. He hosts a great radio show, Your Move Atlanta, and it's on iHeartRadio in Atlanta. He's the father of 4 beautiful daughters, and I really mean that. They are all beautiful, both inside and out. It's fun to be around them because they have such great light. They love to sing, and they love being around each other's company, which I think is so cool. And when he's not selling or writing or speaking for Workman Success Systems, he loves just being outside, working in his yard, and trying to help those middle plants grow. And loves his own landscaping. Cleve, thanks for being part of the webinar today, and I appreciate you being willing to share how to build a 7-figure team. You have a lot going on. How do you do all that and still run a successful business?
Well, you know what, Verl? You have to know sometimes that it's the things that seem insignificant. In fact, I want to back up just a second. Thank you for the question and for the great introduction. And every time I have the opportunity to listen to Paul Wheeler, I always learn something. And as I'm listening, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I'm on this call and I'm a team leader and I'm making $100,000 a year, or I'm an individual agent and I'm making $100,000 a year, and I want to grow to, $1 million, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about today. I have a hard time understanding how what Paul is talking about relates to me growing my business, because if I tuned in, I want Paul just to give me a secret. Just tell me the secret. Tell me what the shortcut is so I can get to $1 million. And the reality is all of the things that Paul talked about, understanding your margin and what your profitability should be, and how to hold people accountable. Those things are so important. So I'm just going to build on in our section what Paul talked about. But let me back up and answer your question, Burl. Being a good leader is something that where you're growing and changing on a daily basis. And every single morning when I wake up, I know that from a leadership standpoint, I am inadequate. I still need to learn. I still need to grow. I still need to develop. The world changes and people change and technology changes. And so you have to be looking for, to be able to stay 2 or 3 steps ahead of the world. You have to be able to be sensitive to your people who are frustrated by the business or who are falling a little bit short of their goals. And so I just wake up in the morning and I say to myself, hey, listen, Cleve, you are still lacking. There are things you need to learn. Now you need to go out and figure out what those things are and bring those back to the market and to your team and see if you can help everybody grow.
I love that.
But it's true. I mean, it's true. Do you want me to go ahead and talk about our first slide, Burl?
Sure. Yep. Let's just jump into it.
As I mentioned, Paul, and he did such a great job. But Paul talks about the importance of having good core values and creating a great culture. And I know when people hear that, when they haven't built a significant team, they think, Paul, just tell me how to get some more sales this week so I can get some more commission income. But the reality is it's all of these little things that seem insignificant, that when you think about them and you're looking at them as an outsider, you're thinking there's no possible way that can be the key to making the business work. It's those things that are insignificant. So when you have big goals, and I hope everybody will remember this, and I watch my coaching clients learn this over time, and it's fascinating to watch them. When you have big goals, every little bitty step can seem very insignificant. But achieving something significant, as Paul said, over a 20-year period, takes all of these little bitty, seemingly insignificant steps, and you have to tie them all together. And so if you're listening and you're thinking, well, what is he talking about? What are the insignificant things that he's talking about that you need to all tie together? I'd love to just give everybody 4 notes to take away on this particular topic. And that is, number 1, you must have a way for accounting for every single lead that flows into your business on first contact. If you're a smaller business, you need to have something like a lead tracker, which happens to be a Workman Success Systems tool that we teach for people to go in and put their leads in. If you're a higher volume lead generation team, then you might put it directly into your high volume lead gen platform or your back end CRM or whatever it is. But when I say 100%, I mean 100% of leads into Lead Tracker on first contact without exception, because it allows you to go back and help your team members focus on what they need to do to move each lead forward. And I'll bet you in most cases, I don't know, Paul, if you could guess what percentage of leads would go into your Lead Tracker and into your CRM if you didn't hold people accountable, but it's probably a very small number, maybe 1 in 5.
Yeah, that's correct. And
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, and now it's 100% because of accountability. But yeah, it would probably be 0 if we didn't inspect it.
So first thing, get all of your leads into Lead Tracker, into your CRM, wherever. Just make sure they're there. Verl, we had a client not too long ago. One of their goals for 30 days was to make sure, listen to this, all their open house leads went into their CRM. They happen to use Commissions Inc. And so their only goal was to make sure that all those leads went into the CRM. And after a 30-day period, we looked, and guess how many leads had been entered into the CRM from open houses? 2.
Probably. Oh, really?
2. And so the reality is they were doing about 4 open houses a week, having an average of 6 visitors. So that is 24 per week. So there was at least 100. And the problem is when none of them get entered into the CRM, the team leader cannot start the process of making sure the follow-up happens. So that's number one. Number two, daily success habits. We must help everybody on our team have a weekly definition for success. Most people judge whether or not they're successful, Verl, by whether or not they produce a certain number of sales this week or this month or this year. And by the time you judge your sales, Paul used the term lagging indicator, by the time the sales have closed and the year is over, it's too late to do anything about it. So we must make a certain number of calls, send a certain number of text messages, meet a certain number of people face to face. And when we do, we can predict the outcome of that. And so you must have a way to help people understand whether or not they're being successful on a daily basis. We call that the daily success habits. You can come up with some kind of point system for scoring people as they take their activities on a daily basis. We happen to believe that 61 points is the magic number. I did not actually give that as a giveaway, by the way. Verl, if you wanted to, if anybody who requests the free downloads at the end of the session, maybe you could send a copy of the daily success habits to them as well. So that's number two. Number three is you must have people use your CRM correctly. And so number one, all prospects into your CRM. Number two, all prospects categorized correctly based on where they are in the home buying or home selling process. And number three, action plans launched for all prospects. I know that sounds so simple, but that is number three, is effective use of your CRM. And then number four, handling the insignificant things that actually lead to something significant over time, are the ABCs of lead management. Now, we do have a copy of this, so if you're listening and you don't want to write it down, you can actually download a free copy at the end. But we categorize leads into 3 different categories. A, someone who's ready to buy or sell immediately, and you have an appointment with them. That's the kicker. And if you teach your agents to have an appointment with them or they cannot count them as an A, that is the big deal there. A B, someone who needs to buy or sell in the next 90 days. You must follow up with them twice a month during the weeks of the 1st and the 15th. A C, somebody ready to buy or sell in longer than 90 days. And Verl, is 16 years longer or shorter than 90 days?
You know, I love that. And what do you do with them, and when do you call them?
So the reality is that a C, 16, somebody needs to buy or sell in longer than 16 years, is longer than 90 days, which means everybody in your database needs to be followed up with at least every 30 days, no matter what. You call your C's during the week of the 8th. We use a very simple script, and we simply call and say, hey, this is Cleve calling with RE/MAX. I just want to make sure I'm not dropping the ball on anything. And we're teaching our agent to use that type of calling. It's what we teach all throughout the Workman Success Systems coaching system. So let's move on to having a weekly definition of success. When you take the daily,
Cleve, as you move on, I'm sorry, but everything you talked about was about insignificant things that don't seem too big. You know, tracking your numbers, putting them in your lead tracker, making sure you have an ABC follow-up program, and that you just follow it. They all seem insignificant, but when you add them together, they make pretty massive impact on your business. And I think that sometimes we gloss over those simple technologies or those simple processes because we're looking for the magic pill. You know, can't I just buy more Zillow leads, right? Which is not a magic pill. It's just a very, very expensive way to go broke.
Well, and if you don't track them, and if you don't help your agents know whether or not they're successful on a daily basis and put them in your CRM and categorize them correctly, I'm not sure what good a Zillow lead is to you. And so when we talk about CRM, first and foremost, we say you got to have everything categorized correctly. And until you can get someone to categorize their leads correctly in the CRM, they're not capable of following up on them in an organized fashion. So it's that little bitty insignificant thing of categorizing correctly that drives all the rest of the behaviors. And it's amazing when you get somebody to do it right.
Love that. Hey, I was listening to this book this morning as I was swimming laps.
It's an amazing book, by the way. Anybody who hasn't read it should get it. It's Mastering the Rockefeller Habit, Scaling Up. And one of the 10 most important Rockefeller habits says basically everybody in your organization must have a daily and weekly definition of success. So what happens is we judge them, and Paul said back in his presentation that we must inspect what we expect. And a lot of times when people think about those things, they think, well, that's a negative thing, holding people accountable. We have to let people get an internal definition of success. And so for me, this time of year, I want to go on 4 listing presentations per week in my real estate practice. And if I do that, I consider it successful. If I don't, then I don't. For all of the agents on our team, they consider success whether or not they have met with 2 new buyer prospects face-to-face each week. And I even say, Burl, it doesn't have to pass the sober rule. So all your buyer prospects don't have to be sober. You need to get with them face to face. Now, don't let them sign any contracts if they're not sober, but you need to get with them face to face, because only when you get someone face to face can you have the opportunity to move someone forward. So if I were a team leader, I am a team leader, but I'm always asking myself, if I were on this call today, I'd be asking, does everyone on my team have a weekly definition of success? And if you want more information on that, Scaling Up is the book you want to listen to or read.
It is fascinating when you see the dynamics of how that works in any team, whether you're in the business of doing real estate coaching or the business of building a real estate practice. When each of your smaller teams or groups of people working on projects have a clear definition of success, they're able to self-manage it at a much higher level. They know what needs to be done because the success has been defined. And I think that concept is simple, but it's not easy to implement.
So, and think about this. If I work for you, Verl, and you tell me, hey, Cleve, you're not performing the way you need to, if it's not a problem for me, then no matter what you say to me is not going to influence my behavior. If I determine that my performance is a problem and I need some help because I need to improve, then any help you give me will land squarely with me because I'm already very sensitive to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about go ahead. Sorry, bro.
No, go ahead.
So let's talk about individual and team goals. And most of us are really good at giving people individual goals and helping them understand how activities lead to achievement. And I think we've included an income goal spreadsheet where somebody can go in and type in their numbers. Hey, I want to make $200,000 and my average sales price is $300,000, and I'll do 50% buyers and 50% sellers, and here's my split. And this spreadsheet will actually spit out for them the amount of activities they need to do. So this slide is not really to focus on every single individual needs to know what they need to do. It's more focused on everybody needs to understand what they need to do individually and how what they need to do individually fits into the entire team goals. And so a lot of cases we leave that out. So Paul says, hey, his team needs to have 20 pendings all the time. And my guess is he's not the only one on the team who knows that number. So when the team is ahead, the team knows they're ahead. When the team is behind, the entire team knows they're behind. So number one, they've got to have their individual goal, but more importantly, they have to know how their goal fits into the entire team. And you really, I don't know, Paul, if you agree, but you have to be totally transparent with everybody on the team about those numbers.
Absolutely.
So as you talk about being transparent with the numbers, a lot of team leaders don't like to have their team members know how much they're making or what the thing is. Paul's transparent to the point where they know what his daily definition of success is and what that means from a revenue. Did we generate enough revenue today to consider today a success? And the entire team knows it. They discuss it. It's in their leadership meetings, and it's really interesting how they behave according to their understanding of those numbers.
When I hired you as a coach back in 2011, basically to help me put my business back on track, one of the things we talked about was us being transparent. It made me very, very uncomfortable to start sharing all the production numbers because I was thinking when I share the production numbers with them, they're going to think I'm making a ton of money and they're not making, sort of their fair share. And really, it was the opposite. So everybody's focused on where's our gross commission income, where are we year to date versus our plan, what's our total production, how many listings do we have? They really get focused on it, and we actually bring it all the way down to what is the percentage of conversion of the total lead flow that's come to you as an agent. And they range on our team from 9.5% up to about 30%, not total lead flow, total handoffs. And so we try to be transparent on everything, and it's very effective. A little uncomfortable sometimes, but very effective.
I love that uncomfortable feeling sometimes.
Every time I get off a coaching call with you, I feel uncomfortable. And it's basically what drives. Listen, I used to say, hey, I was all excited when I got on this call. Now I'm depressed. But the reality is I just realized that I'm falling short on certain things. And there's lots of room for improvement. And really, we all need to be reminded of that anyway, honestly. So I want to talk about core values. And Paul mentioned, hey, you got to have core values and you got to have culture. And in a lot of cases, this happens to be the Workman Success System's core values. And one of them, it says right there, have and share vision. And you see another one that says live freely, show gratitude, persist until we succeed. The problem sometimes is when we use these sort of single word or 2 or 3 word core values is that not everybody has the same definition or understanding of the meaning of that word. And so, for example, if we took the show gratitude, Verl, it might mean something different to you than it does to other people. So it might, for one side of the equation, mean people need to be more gracious and show me they have gratitude for me. And for other people, it might mean I need to show more gratitude. And so my point here is whatever you think your core values are, don't be afraid to go through and give a very specific definition of what those core values are. What do they mean? So as an example, one of our core values is partnership, because we want people to understand their relationship between a buyer or seller client and themselves is a partnership, and we describe it. And we say partnership is creating greater mutual benefit through mutual investment. It includes a spirit of collaboration and a sense of stewardship. It implies professional responsibility and accountability, yet still allows room for generosity and forgiveness. It is unwavering loyalty that leads to genuine trust and long-lasting relationships. It requires we look to create long-term financial security for our clients and ourselves. And so every single week we're reading one of our core values in our weekly meetings, and it's amazing when they read the definition of that core value and they talk about what it means to them, then the core values start to come to life. Because really the reason we want to have a core value, and I'm sure Paul agrees, is that we want people to know that this is the standard they should live up to. This is what they should try to achieve. This is how they should try to perform and behave, because then it starts influencing the behavior of your entire organization.
You know, it's interesting that you want to do a clear definition, because I think that it's critical that everybody's on the same page as to what the core values mean to the company, and the meanings sometimes change over time. What do you say to the team leader who created? This happened yesterday, actually, on a coaching call. I had a team leader who created their core values, and as we went through and discussed what the meaning was of the core values, they realized they were just words, and they weren't really their core values. They really weren't what they really believed. What do you think about changing your core values once you've made them public, or once you've created them? Is it okay to go back and change them?
Absolutely. It's totally fine. I was with one of the top, he's probably 25 or 26 in terms of total production in all of the state of Georgia. So you're talking about an $80 million producer. And he's having a hard time with his culture in his business, and we're trying to work through that. And he pulls up his core values, and Verl, they are beautiful. I mean, they look like a professional marketing person, graphic designer did them. And when I started asking what they meant, about 3 or 4 into it, he goes, oh my gosh, I see what my problem is. People don't know what these mean. And so we literally on the call just wrote a little clearer definition of what the core values were, and they started using those. And number one, he started living up to them, because one of his core values was to be present, and he was doing all of his meetings off on Zoom while everybody else is in the office, and he wasn't matching the core value. And so the clearer you can be, generally the more influence you'll have over someone's behavior. That's what I found anyway.
Let's talk for just a minute about why teams fail, and how you apply what you've learned with Patrick Lencioni's book. I love this book.
It's amazing. And if you're running a team and you haven't read this book, you certainly need to. I only want to focus on the very bottom one, which is absence of trust. And people who are very successful in real estate tend to create an environment that does not promote any type of trust whatsoever. So the book goes on to describe absence of trust as, more specifically, a lack of vulnerability or of not being real with the rest of the team. And so as a team leader, and I say if you're going to rid the team of the 5 dysfunctions, you need to rid yourself of the 5 dysfunctions first. I spend most of my time worrying about how I have these dysfunctions way more than I worry about how our agents on our team have the dysfunctions. And so in order to be more real and to be more vulnerable, one of the things that I'm working on this year is to share my interpersonal shortcomings, the mistakes that I make, any insecurities that I have, and then most importantly, Verl, to genuinely ask for help from the people I'm leading. And it's a weird dynamic to say, hey, Drew, you work for me, you're on my team. Hey, we're dealing with this problem. The reality is it makes me a little bit concerned. It makes me a little bit nervous, and I'm not sure of what the solution should be. But magic starts to happen when you do that, because then Drew brings his skills and his power to the table to help us put together a solution for that particular problem. And then you got this co-creation for the solution, so it's magic. People need to know that you as a leader are human. And sometimes as a leader, we spend all of our time trying to make people think that I don't mean we're trying to act like we're better than they are, meaning we're not doing it on purpose, but we're trying to say, hey, if you'll just be like me, everything will be fine. Well, the reality is, Verl, the only way I can be you would be to have lived your entire life and experienced everything you've experienced. So I can't do anything like you. And if I understand that you're human and you're fallible and you have vulnerabilities and you have worries and shortcomings and you're as successful as you are, then there might be hope for me too.
So how does vulnerability enhance trust?
So, because it makes us real. So I am vulnerable and I have insecurities. And so if you and I are talking and you're vulnerable with me and you admit your insecurities, it immediately makes me more connected with you, which makes me more willing to share openly with you about my shortcomings or what I'm worried about or whatever.
It totally makes sense. What people have a hard time doing is letting their guard down. Everybody wants to come across as successful and knowing all and having all the answers, and they feel like if they don't have the answers, then they're going to be thought of as less than, and nobody wants to feel that way.
That's right. Well, so here's the example. I was in a city south of Nashville last week speaking to a coaching client and his team. And one of the things that I try to do when I first start speaking is I try to share a story about something that's personal to me that other people don't expect me to share. And when they learn that not only do I not come in there and act like I'm better than they are, but I come in there and I basically say, listen, guys, I struggle with the same stuff that you guys do, but let me share some cool ideas about how to be successful anyway, they listen more immediately. Their receiver for what you're trying to give gets put up on level 10 instead of level 1 because they know you're human.
I love that, Cleve. There's so many great insights, and I want to make sure people have the ability to ask questions of both you and Paul. So take a second now if you have questions for Paul or for Cleve. Any specific questions you have about what they're doing and how they're running their seven-figure businesses. Cleve, one of the things Paul talked about is he talked about profitability. Give us a little bit of snapshot of how you measure success in your business.
So it's very interesting. The percentages, I haven't heard Paul talk about those percentages before. It could have been because I wasn't paying attention, but that's exactly the way we like to measure our business. We like to keep 25% of the gross commission income. I've spent the last 10 years trying to do that. I usually get to 22 or 23. I don't usually get to 25. And we like to keep 40% of the gross margin. So after we pay our agents, we like to keep 40% of that number. I generally wind up in the 30-32% range, but I'm trying to hit those numbers. And listen, every single month you got to be looking for ways to cut costs because you are always spending money that is not providing a return for you. And as a business owner, you think, well, I'm in control. I'll do what I want to anyway. But we always got to look for ways to cut costs.
I love that. Tell us about the giveaways. What are the things we're giving away?
So I think we've got 4 different things that we're giving away. We've got a handout on some examples of some core values and a specific step-by-step process that we teach at Workman Success Systems to create core values, and I think people will like that. We've also got the outline of the ABCs of lead management, which gives the definition of an A, B, and a C lead. And guys, if you're listening, guys and girls, if you're listening and the only thing you take away is that, it will change your business if you get people to categorize leads correctly. And then right there in the middle, it says the income goal spreadsheet. That's the Excel spreadsheet where you or one of your team members could go in and put in all the specifics of how they want to earn and where their sales come from, and it'll basically spit out for them the exact activities, the number of face-to-face meetings they need to have, the number of listings they need to get, the number they'll close. It'll spit it all out for them. It'll figure it out based on the information that they enter in the little green sections for those of you who can see the screen.
And then you gave away the daily success habits. We don't have a picture of it here, but the DSH of the daily success habits tracker is a fillable PDF, and I'll make sure my team includes that in the giveaways. You don't have to ask specifically for that. Boy, we ran out of time on this webinar. I'd love to be able to ask both of you more questions. Paul, any parting thoughts for someone who's thinking about building a team? Is there any one thing that you think that you wish you would have known in the beginning that you know today you would do differently?
You know, great question. I like to go back to anything worthwhile is going to take some effort. So it's going to be a lot of work, but if you have a long-term vision and a goal and a life that you want to create, it really works out really well. You're going to learn, you're going to get knocked down, you're going to have incredible successes. Just enjoy the ride. It's not about the destination, it is the journey. But if you have a good vision and a good strategy to accomplish that vision, all of a sudden you will get to the end, and the end is pretty cool too. So, but just enjoy the ride for sure, and get coached. If I hadn't mentioned that before, and the Workman System is one of the best. I've been coached for 25 years. It's the best I've found so far.
Well, I appreciate that, Cleve. Going back, looking at some of the mistakes you've made, I mean, you've bought brokerages, you've had great success and failure in real estate, and you've come back to great success again. What did you learn from all these lessons, and how do you help people avoid some of the mistakes you made?
Well, I'm not sure all mistakes have to be avoided, because almost all the important stuff I've learned in life have been because of real big mistakes. I mean, they weren't really mistakes. They were timing problems. And all I'll tell you is whatever you're suffering now, it is probably the first step leading to greatness if you'll use that, the pain, if you will. The best thing that ever happened to me is when I invested all my money in a brokerage and all of it went down the tubes from 2006 to 2009, and that was literally the best thing that ever happened to me, because it taught I could earn it all back. I just needed to do more of the right things and move on. And when I get negative thoughts about what's going on around me, I try to find somebody else to focus on. So I'm looking for somebody to help. And if I can find somebody who seems to deserve it the least, like a $75,000 short sale that'll take 6 months to do, those are the ones I want to help the most, because it helps me get over thinking about myself by thinking about other people. To me, that is the biggest thing you can do to get your head out of where you're suffering now and move on for the future.
Great advice from both of you. And I want to thank, on behalf of RISMedia and Homes.com, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights with our audience today. To get the downloads, just go to workmansuccess.com/RIS July. And let's make sure we let RISMedia know we appreciate being on the webinar. You may be asked to do a survey. Please fill out the survey and share with us additional topics or things you'd like to hear in the future. On behalf of Workman Success Systems, RISMedia and Homes.com, thank you for being here, and we'll talk to you on the next RISMedia webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Burl.
Thanks, Burl.